a good life and get on with it. So they basically want technology to get out of the way. And then Sergey Brin says that computing should just be more comfortable. So their underlying philosophy is that as the technology becomes more personal and onto the body, it should start to disappear and kind of get out of the way. And I've shown this before. They talk about the glass as like a kind of a now machine that's focusing on location, context, time, information, and communication. So I wanted to get some feedback from you. You've now had the chance to use Google Glass for a few days with a variety of applications. What do you guys think of the user interface and the user experience with Glass?
It's challenging at first. So you have to sort of relearn a lot of things. Like it's not the same as any other device I've used.
Mm-hmm. Can't pinch to zoom, that's for sure. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Getting used to the timeline concept and stuff. Once you've understood that, I think it makes more sense.
Right.
You have to. I mean, I guess it's expected that you'd have to adjust because it is a sort of new type of device.
Yeah, I was. It's interesting. I don't know how many of you have taken the Glass devices out and give them to strangers to use and see how they start using them, because once you've used it for a few minutes, it becomes quite easy swiping on the timeline or not. But I find a lot of people will be they'll be tapping on the camera at the front here and wondering why it's not working, or they'll be pushing up like this and wondering why it's not working, or they'll grab the the glass like this, and then because their fingers are all touching on here, then it'll start going to a search mode and things like that. So maybe a bit unintuitive sometimes. But what are some other people's thoughts about the user interface?
Scaling is going to be an interesting one. Once you start to get plasma, so
yeah,
timeline, there's no sort of easy folders kind of thing. So
right.
Maybe that's an application that
So when I was at Google, that was one of the things that I was trying to think about, and they didn't really, at least while I was there, didn't have a good solution. So my iPhone, I don't know, it seems like I've got about 8 screens worth of apps, so that's probably 100 and some apps. And if you have it on Glass, you have to slide through to get to those. It's just going to be a nightmare.
you could see with the timeline you could do automatically stack up last week, some months, or whatever.
Right.
Since you see that these codes are so maybe something.
Yeah, maybe. And it's interesting that they have the apps and the data almost blended together. You've got your timeline where your data is all appearing, and you've also got and some of those cards actually launch apps and some don't. And then you've got the you tap down to the Google menu, and then you've got the Glass menu and all the apps there as well. So yeah. Anybody have any other thoughts about the user UI?
Yeah,
Tracy?
speaking is challenging. If I had on doing something someone else spoke, jumped to something I didn't even know was.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So it's interesting to think of the metaphor that they use for that. So I've got I wanted to go through a couple of interface guidelines that I've grabbed from the Valve website, and then talk a little about some lessons that I've learned. And these are lessons that have come from mostly the people from the Glass developer team from long periods of use. Because after you use devices for a while, then you start to learn certain things. So first of all, on the interface guidelines, you already know it's all about the timeline, really. It's interesting. I've used other wearable computing displays. So one of the competitors is a company called Vuzix, and they make a display that's a little bit bigger form factor, but it's essentially a screen on a stick with Android running on there. But their default screen is just a regular Android screen with rows of icons, and it's a real nightmare to try and use because they have a rocker switch, and you've got to flick the rocker switch to try and click through their icons and then select the one you want. So in many ways, the timeline is a very nice match of the affordances of the device to the presentation of the data. It's very natural to swipe and see the data sliding along. So I guess that with the timeline, as you know, it's a standard way to present cards. You can get access to system-wide voice commands, and it's also a way to launch the glassware applications. I think Gunn's already gone through most of this, where he's talked at length about the different types of cards you've got. So I'll skip this a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about design patterns as well. So I guess most of you come from a computer science or software engineering background, and in software engineering you must be familiar with design patterns, right? Yeah, so with glass as well, they're trying to create some design patterns too. So here are the three types of cards: the static, live, and immersion cards. And most of what you'll be doing is mostly with static and live cards. So just to differentiate between them, has Gunn shown this picture already? Did he show you this one already, or you can't remember? Okay, I'm not sure if he's a bad teacher or if he didn't show it. So with the static card, this is where you get send notifications. So in this case, this is a movie card here, and your glassware pushes the card onto your device, and so then it just inserts itself in the timeline, just sits there, and progressively going further and further back as you go along. Static cards can have some special properties, so they can be, there's a lot of text, you can spread them across several cards, and they can bundle together. I think you just talked about that, Neville. So if you have a bunch of SMS messages, they might bundle them all together, so that when you tap on the card here, it expands out and tells you what's in each of the bundles. And the bundled cards have a little white page turned on the corner there. So when you tap it, it'll go expand out. So in contrast, you've got live cards, and so these are cards that sit and that run all the time once they start until you stop them, and they have access to low-level sensor data and don't remain on the timeline. So when you stop running them, then they'll exit off the timeline as well. And finally, you've got immersions, which have you played this game? Have you tried it? This is the Spellista game, which is one of the games on the glass. So if you go to OK Glass, play a game, then it'll launch the menu, and you've got 3 or 4 games to play with. And this is the first game that was actually released, official game that was released on glass, and it's basically a word matching game. As you tilt your head around, this bubble moves around, and you're trying to put the bubble over the letters and spell words. So in this case, with immersions, the app takes over the whole user experience and provides a custom experience. So you've got the 3 types of cards: static, live cards, and immersions. When do you think you'd want to use those 3 cards? If you were, what would be a good reason to use an immersion card compared to a live card or a static card? Anybody have any thoughts about that?
More control over the navigation. More control over the content.
So that would be the immersion card, right? Yeah, that's true. How about when would you want to use a static card?
We're just sending something like text or like a quick update website.
Yeah, so I guess it's probably things that aren't time critical as well. And then the live cards are ones that are often time critical or that reflect ongoing tasks as well. So the other element of the cards design is menus as well. So with bundling, for example, you have a menu tab on there, so you tap to invoke and it expands out and shows you the menu. And of course there's also the input, and I guess you'll know the 4 main types of input that you can use here. I haven't done nudging. Has anybody had that working? I'm not sure. Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure what nudging is. It's maybe nodding down or something. But apparently when you nudge, you can make your device go to sleep. So I haven't seen that at all. So I want to talk a little bit about design patterns. So in software design, of course, they often use design patterns to enable you or to teach you best practices. And there's really 3 types of design patterns they've got for glass right now. One for the static cards, and the ongoing task cards, and the immersion cards. So with the static card, it's a very simple design pattern. Your glassware sends a card or sends a message, and you insert a card onto the timeline. But it may be that the glassware repeatedly inserts cards to the timeline. So, for example, in my glass display, I've subscribed to CNN. So about 3 times a day I get a message from CNN of something, and then if I want to I can tap into that and it starts playing a video or gives me an update as well. And then live cards in contrast though are long-running cards that just you can come back to. So here's an example of a stopwatch. So you can start the stopwatch from either a static card or from the OK Glass menu, and when it started it inserts the card on the timeline, and it keeps on running at the same place in the timeline until you tap it and stop it, and then it removes the card from the timeline. The live cards in most cases are always inserted on the left-hand side of the clock, because that's the place where the things are happening now sit. And so one example of that is the Strava bike application. So in this case, when you start running the Strava application, it inserts a card in the timeline, and then you can tap, and when you Strava is a timing application basically. When you tap, it puts up the menu here, and the menu in this case is either splits, where you can do a split in your time, or finish and it stops timing. And then when you finish, it pulls the card off the timeline. And finally, there's immersions, which again have a very simple use case or design pattern, where you just start the application, it takes over, and then you swipe down and it returns back to the timeline where you were before. So just a few words about style guidelines. On the Developer Glass website there's a whole style guide, so if you want to make sure that your apps and your cards look and follow the same style guidelines, they have sets there. So this is the basic template for all the cards. If you go to the web page, you'll see that these are all color-coded, and color codes mean different things. Like, the blue border here, this is the region where you'd put an image if you had a split card. So here's some example layouts. This is a list layout, for example. This is a notification on a picture, a text layout, and that's a picture layout. So if you go to their site, you can find all the layouts there as well. And then lots of icons. So again, you can go to the developer site and you can download, I think there's about 60 or 80 icons there as well. So if you need the icons, you can get the things there. And of course, all the text in Glass is the same. So they all use Roboto font text, either thin for the highlighting, or secondary light for the smaller text. And it resizes automatically to fill as well. The design guidelines also recommend that you only use certain colors. So here's the color swatch from Glass, and here's some examples of it being used as well. So I guess if you stick with these design guidelines, your app will fit nicely alongside all the other Glass apps as well. So they say, they give a couple of best practice recommendations here. So for example, don't use pinned timer items as a launcher. So sometimes people will, I guess an example of that is, I think on some of the devices here, they've got a game called The Game, and the card is oftentimes pinned onto the right beside the clock. So to start that, instead of going down to the OK Glass menu and then looking at all the applications at that level, you just have to click on the card. But the problem with that is it starts filling your timeline up with these static items that don't do anything. Then they say that you should follow the standard card design. You shouldn't use the Mirror API for immediate interactivity, because it takes some time for the messaging to get back through the server and back to the device as well. Following standard menu design, and using appropriate content and bundling and paginating as well. So those are the very rough design guidelines for building user interfaces. I wanted to talk a little bit about lessons that you can learn from using Glass, but you've all used Glass now for a few days. So what are some of the key lessons you think that you've learnt about the using the user interface and interactions with Glass? Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
My left eye gets strained a little bit. I'm not sure why.
Okay, interesting. It might be. I'm not sure if you're left or right dominant. So just like people have left-handers or right-handedness, they also have left or right dominant. And sometimes, because glass is right now only a right-eye device, so sometimes people who are left-eye dominant find it hard to see the display because it's a dominant eye. So oftentimes they have to shut their left eye a lot to be able to see what's on the glass. If you're right dominant, then I'm not sure why you'd be feeling strain in the left eye, but I'm not an eye doctor, so it doesn't matter. Does anybody have any other thoughts about things you've learnt from using the technology for a few days now?
I also find it quite hard to do the X swipes.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what that would be. It's interesting.
Swipe would be easier.
Yeah, interesting.
Nice to have some properties to set up.
Yes, yeah. There's it's kind of annoying that when you get the device, you can't customize the UI in any way. You know, when you normally get an Android phone, you put your own skin on it or whatever else. But I'm sure when the commercial device finally comes out, they'll have some sort of customization. It's trying to make it a very intimate device, and it should be like going to get to the opticians and buying a pair of glasses where you can pick the frames you want, and then you can pick what you see inside there as well. But not quite yet.
There's so much different colours, but
yeah. That's the only choice you got now. Well, there's 5 colours, and we've got no, sorry, yeah, there's 5 colours, and we've got 3 of them. So there's ones we don't have is bright blue and bright orange. Yeah. And you can buy frames now, actually. For $230 or so, you can buy frames to fit your own lenses in them as well. We don't have those yet.
And the battery life is, I think, probably concerning. Buy a light and glasses for a version that's
Yeah. It depends how you use it, but yeah, it's definitely. There was I think I told you about the journalist who was in Egypt during the riots, and he had Google Glass on. And what he had is he had a USB battery charger. So I own one, and it's basically you put two AA batteries into it, and it's USB on the other end. And when you plug that in, you'll go for the whole day pretty much. So he just had that in his pocket with the USB cord poking up, and then that worked out for him okay. But yeah, if you're using the camera or if the display's on, then you're probably going to get just a little more than an hour of battery life out of it, which isn't very much.
Actually, just about the plugging it in, I noticed that this cord is quite large.
Yeah.
If they maybe made it a bit smaller up the back, they have like a very thin, like an earphone cable going just down the back, or maybe under your shirt or something.
So you're thinking that you could have the USB cord coming out the back?
Just a very thin little one, or just a little USB cord out the back.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether they chose to put the contact point there rather than here, but yeah.
There'd be quite a few people who would like to, like if I was using one all day, I think I wouldn't mind having that cable if I could just have it on all the time.
They may have put the USB here because this is the CPU and of course and everything. So they put it here, they have to run a lot of cabling into there. Yeah. This is also a weak point. When I was at Google, the glass that I had just snapped off, and so I was overseas at the time, so I had to go to the store. Well, it cracked, and I had to go and buy a nail and duct tape and glue it all back together so it wouldn't fail on me when I was going to do the demo the next day. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Was also saying they took the GPS off it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't help the way we don't have any carry cases here, but they have a carry case which has a hard plastic top. So you put this in the carry case, and the hard plastic top sits here. But then these pieces are up here in the soft cloth, and if you're not careful, like I put mine in my bag with a whole bunch of books, and I get some of the books pressed up against this, and it bent over. So some people are complaining also that you can't fold the glasses, and they say you really like to fold it. Anyway, so you want to say something, Neville? Or?
I was just thinking from the development point of view, your critical decisions about which technology you're going to use, which approach you're going to use to building the work is pretty critical. This really start out, preparing you start out before you have something to be used.
Yeah.
A lot harder to reuse bits of some prototype.
It's true, yeah. Yeah, that's true, definitely. So I've just got a few lessons that these mostly come from the glass development team inside Google, who've been wearing the technology for a long time. So first of all, one of them is that the getting transparent displays is really tricky. You can't make the display, you can't cover everything up. So you've got to have clarity, contrast, and brightness. So I don't know how many of you have gone outside and tried wearing Google Glass outdoors, but it's really tricky to be able to make it so you can both see the content without making it too bright for you as well. So the US military has been doing that for a while, but still very, very difficult. At the lab here, we used to have a virtual retinal display that basically was a very, very low power laser that could laser images directly onto the eye. And that was fantastic for going outdoors, but unfortunately it broke. So here's some examples showing some of the challenges. So here's a picture of an island off the coast. And when you're indoors, this is what it looks like. And it's kind of got a blue tint on it, and it's lost some of its colors. When you're outdoors, it's now washed out, and it's looking much more redder as well. So it's really hard to get a true color display that you can use in multiple different scenarios. The other thing which is difficult is reading. So you probably don't want to read a book on glass because it'll lots and lots of screens to go through, and it's really difficult. So because of that, when you're designing user interfaces, you want to make sure there's a minimum amount of reading, and the interactions don't require a lot of text understanding at all. Looking at lots of information on glass is also uncomfortable as well. So you may not necessarily want to, like for example, the game Spellista. That's designed to be a game that just takes about 30 seconds to a minute to play. So it's lots of short gameplay rather than try and sit and look at the screen for hours at a time. I remember when I was at Google, I spent some time watching movies, CNN movies, and I got so I have the display on for half an hour or so and watch a whole string of movies, and you got the eye strain very, very quickly from doing that. I guess maybe that's something you're having as well. So it's not a good device for immersion. And so precise input on glass is very difficult, and both text input. So like you can see the person here, speaker meshes. Moab is like 100 degrees right now, but we're having do such hun. So I don't know what the person said, maybe something about fun or something, I'm not sure. Anyway. And if you've tried dictating on glass, you'll see that the speech recognition isn't. It's good, but it's not going to get 100%. And then also doing very precise input is very difficult as well. So some of the students in the lab here, when they first started using Google Glass, they decided to put buttons on the screen, and they had to select and tap the buttons. And it turns out it's quite a nightmare, and especially when you start walking and trying to tap buttons and walk at the same time, it doesn't really work out very well. So really the point with glass is to get the interface out of the way and let people enjoy their interaction with the real world. So that's why a lot of the interactions or interfaces you see are very minimal, and they just provide a little information which is relevant to the user's task. So for example, if you're at the Grand Canyon, then you want to be able to share a picture with Monica, and you have to have that with her as well. And we talked about this before, the notion of micro interactions, and being able to have these very small interactions that shouldn't take really much time at all, just a single button push or a single swipe or small text input. In many ways, what it's about is providing first-person information, and this is much more personal than what other computer devices provide. One way to think about designing for glass is also it's like your own personal rear view mirror. So just like with the rear view mirror, you don't want to clutter it up with lots of information. So you want to be able to keep the information density very low on glass and make it so that people can just glance at the display and understand what they're supposed to know, and then glance away again. And you want to be able to not add to the unnecessary interruptions people have in their everyday life. So if you get a little bit stuck about how to design the user interface, just keep on thinking of it as a rearview mirror, and think about, if you're driving along and you can see it's always in your eye, what would you want to see on the display? The other thing you should be thinking about when you're designing is use of context. So, for example, a couple of times I've been bike riding wearing glass, and glass actually has a really good maps interface. But as you said, the GPS was turned off right now, so you have to have another phone to provide you the signal. But when you're biking along, it provides a almost first-person map. It's kind of a above the street level view, and the map automatically rotates as you start turning your body around, and automatically updates, and it shows you about 100 or 200 feet in each direction as well. So it's a really fantastic way to navigate as well. So these types of experiences are the ones really to aim for, when you can automatically get context and provide that to the person as well. And then you have to think about glasses as being a very personal device. So it should recognize and adapt to your behavior, not the other way around. So the case now where you can't customize the interface, that kind of gets away from that. Oops. And it's glass should be also a device that can somehow create value for people around you that aren't wearing it. So, for example, sometimes when I've been wearing it, I'll be taking pictures or video, and I'll be sure to share that with everybody around me as well. And the final thought I had was that the tools that we have are becoming more and more intimate and immediate. So, glasses on the body lets you capture things right away. And with these tools, hopefully we can create a future where there's more creative expression and understanding empathy of people around us. And I want to show you a little fun video that I got that kind of shows. It's a concept video that was made at Google when I was there, to show the type of maybe future applications that glass could provide. And so these guys made this concept of a kind of a shared experience around clapping. So you'll see from here. And all the footage on this was all shot through the glass camera.
You want to clap your hands?
So the idea was that you would record yourself clapping on your glass, and then you'd send that video somewhere else, and that would start a chain where the person who receives it then has to add their claps and then send it on to the next person. Before you know it, you've kind of got this video, everybody clapping as well. And I want to show you one other video too, which was this one here. So there's a few explorer stories which they've released through glass, and it really shows how glass can change the way people interact with each other. So I showed you one already with the physics teacher that went to CERN, and he was able to hang out with his class and bring them back in. And now this is another one here. So this is about Alex, and Alex is a woman who had a car accident a few years ago, and I guess in the accident her spine was severed or something, so she became paraplegic, and so she hasn't been camping since the accident, but now she's got glass. She can do some things she couldn't do before the accident, so it's kind of a nice story about how technology can be enabling as well.
Being disabled is the first thing people see, and of course it's a big part of my reality. But it's not who I am. It's not the only thing I am. Disability doesn't define me. 2 weeks ago I became a glass explorer. It meant I could do things I thought I wouldn't be able to do anymore. Take a picture. later. This trip will be the first time I'm apart from a caregiver for more than just a few hours. 600 feet turned left. Last allows me to regain that confidence. And when I overcome a challenge, like becoming the navigator, that's how I did it. I gained a little bit of that confidence I had before the accident back. And that doesn't go away. We need marshmallows fixed. Are there bears in the Catskills? Take a picture. Being here with my friends is really meaningful. Yeah, it's awesome because these people have supported me and been with me the whole time. Okay, take a picture. It's been amazing to feel a sense of independence in nature with people I love. Okay, class, share with family. Thank you. I'm Ally Splasher. I'm a law student, an amateur photographer, more than meets the eye.
So, can I keep a picture? That's all the slides I had for you today, but I want to see how you guys are going with your projects in coding. Have you been making progress or getting stuck or? Both? Okay.
I found it quite difficult to sort of know exactly where to start with. I mean, I've just ended up kind of skipping the problem of knowing which method to use and just sort of jumped in and skipped a few features.
Uh-huh.
So something like I wanted to provide like a menu type interface.
Right.
Just to be able to select out of a list of items, and I couldn't figure out how to do that with class. Because it seems like if there's a menu option that comes up at the very start, where you say something and it brings up a list of items,
right.
you can either say them, read them out, that kind of thing. But I couldn't work out how to actually do that myself.
Oh, okay. Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I built an interface like that in processing a while ago. I can share the code with you. But basically what I did is I made a card, and then on the card I put a scroll menu. And so when you swipe into the card, and then you, I can't remember how I did it. I think I swiped it in. When I was on the card I could tap, and then it would go into menu selection rather than when I kept on swiping horizontally, it would let me scroll down the menu back up again.
Okay.
And then you tap again, and it goes back to horizontal sliding.
Yep.
So you kind of swapped modes as well. But that was using processing, so I'm not quite sure if you're using processing or Android. So I don't know how to do that with Android. Yeah. What about the rest of you? Does anybody have any other problems or?
Just a couple of things I'm trying to had a lot of time.
Right.
And delve into it. I think this is what we're using. We're going to. Well, we've had a look at the Compass application as a card and going to put that in some location that's got location in it as well. It actually does like what we were thinking, which was to take a bearing a location, and it has a raw data file with some location information in it,
Right.
and it goes along the bottom of the page of the card. As you continue, you can get closer to it, show them up. And that's for like what we were doing. So
This is for the damaged roads, right? So
this
you,
was damaged roads,
yeah.
So we wanted bearing and location. We wanted bearing location to find what the closest roadworks are, depending on where you're moving ahead. And it's a good way to get the data directly from the web.
It might be interesting to also add, when you are looking at the, you got the roadworks on the bottom appearing, you could maybe tap one of the roadworks icons and get more information out of it as well. It might be that it's a big delay because there, or it might just be a rough road or whatever as well. Yeah. I forgot to mention that I'm more than happy if any of you want to take the displays back home with you tonight to work on stuff at home as well. So I guess we've only got 3 working so far, which is unfortunate. One of our other ones died on Monday, but yeah, if anybody wants to take them home tonight, it's more than welcome to do that. Yeah. Any other comments or thoughts or anything?
I guess I kind of like that it's in GDK. It's basically just pure Android. I've got
Right.
troubles making cards going from one place to another. Things get going blank, so screw it. It's all text fields now. It works just as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. That's great.
It's
Yeah.
just the fact that you can apply the existing logic and not forced to use the
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Possibly broken API or half-finished API.
Yeah. When we were doing, or Gun was doing a lot of the, I guess tomorrow Gun's going to talk about what we've been doing with augmented reality on glass, and he first started that before the GDK was released. So everything was done with normal Android SDK, and it was just fine. It was okay.
Do we have any kind of insight into the time lock frame for commercial release?
Oh, well, I had thought, when I was there, they kept on saying the first quarter of 2014, but I don't think it's going to happen right now. So they had the stage rollout with the Glass Explorer program, where first of all they had 2,000 devices that they sold to people at the Google I/O conference, and it was quite amazing. They bought them and then had to wait for a year to pick them up. So when I was at Google, it was about to become the next conference was about to roll around. So people had ordered their devices a year before. They'd paid $1,500, and then they got a Perspex box with engraved a number, and that was their number in the queue. And so when I was there, they were frantically trying to produce enough devices so that they could. Their goal was that everybody who turned up to the the Google I/O conference with their Perspex box should be able to pick up a device at the conference, and they made it. They were working really hard to get enough devices made. So that was the first rollout, and then they announced 10,000 people would be able to get them through the Glass Explorer program, and you basically had to email Google and beg that you could buy one of the glasses off them. And that was again $1,500. And they had 160,000 people emailed in for that, and so it was a very successful marketing campaign. And what they've done most recently, just before Christmas, is that everybody who's in the Glass Explorer program and has got a device was allowed to invite 3 friends. So now I guess that means they're ramping up from 10,000 devices to 40,000 devices, with another 30,000 coming to the market. But I'm not sure when they're going to be generally on sale. I keep on hearing on the web and the like that it's probably more likely to be the second half of this year now.
So is that, do you think, because there are technical things like wanting to have enough apps in the store that people won't
Right. I think there's a couple of factors. When I was there, getting the GDK finished was an issue. I mean, they had a lot of programmers, and they've got that out the door now, so that's no longer an issue. I think there's an issue around getting the production ramped up. Turns out it's really, really hard, and I didn't appreciate till I got there. To have 50 or 60 devices, and then ramp it up to 1,000 devices, and then ramp it up from there to 10,000 devices. One of the challenges that they had when I was there was getting the display working right. So when you build these displays, you can only ship ones that don't have bad pixels in them, and that's if you make 100 displays, a certain number of them will have bad pixels, and you can't ship them, and that's called the yield rate. And so the idea is you want to get as high yield rate as possible. And when I was there, they were doing lots of different interesting engineering to try and increase the yield rate, up to above 10% or 20% or whatever. So there was a challenge with that as well. But I think those are mostly solved now. So I guess there's also this is a beta program, so it's quite interesting because I can't imagine Apple doing anything the same, where they release a device which isn't really finished yet and getting ready to try it. So it might be that Google, once they've got 30 or 40,000 devices out there, feel that they've learned enough from having devices out there, then they might actually not do the commercial rollout and wait for another year or so and produce the version 3 or 4 of the device. But we'll have to see. But regardless of that, there are some competitors that are in the marketplace now anyway. And I showed you the Recon Jet display and the Vuzix M100, and there's at least 2 or 3 others that are coming out. I can show you, and they're all different categories, characterizations. So Epson have just started selling a new type of display, which is the BT200, and it looks like this. I guess you can here's one right there. So it's bulkier than glass, but it's a stereo see-through display. We have the earlier one in the lab actually, which is much bulkier, and it didn't have a camera or any sensors in it. But this one here has a camera embedded in one of the frames here, and also an orientation sensor as well. It's a little bit different from glass because it doesn't have all the Android electronics or all the hardware to run Android in the device itself. You have a second small box that you carry that has an Android device in it that drives the display, and that provides the battery as well. But these are coming on sale now for about $600, and probably they're a bit too bulky. Well, they look too nerdy to kind of walk around campus all day with them. But if you were in a job where you had to be able to see virtual content overlaid in the real world, or we wanted a high amount of information in a short period of time, this might be one way to do that.
That's full like 3D overlay.
Yes, it's got two displays in it. Unlike the, if I click through here, you can see. And we can watch the video. I'm not sure if the video is actually any good. We'll see what happens. I think it's an animated. Oh yeah. So you see we've got two, and the resolution's a little more. It's 960 resolution. There's a camera there. And you got the computer separate. So that's on sale now, although they haven't got a ship date, I think. But if you click through here, you can pre-order. And I think they'll probably try and ship around the middle of the year or so. So that's $700. Shipping in 40 days, I guess. So $700 for that. And there are a number of other competitors who are producing similar types of hardware as well.
But they had no trackpad on the device itself.
No, it has it on the box you hold in your hand, and actually that's a little bit of a nightmare because with the earlier one, I'll see if I can bring it tomorrow and you can try it out. But because sometimes you're not quite sure the orientation of the box, you just grab it and you start mousing around, and the UI they had on this, well the start screen was a regular Android unlock screen, so you had to slide the bar to unlock, and sometimes it would take me 5 minutes to click on the thing and slide it in the right direction, and it was just disaster. But there was
the swipe is in the same direction as the slide one.
Yeah, it makes it very easy. Yeah. Whereas this, because it's a 2D trackpad, you can slide in whatever orientation you want, and that may not necessarily be the one that you have to unlock. But once you got into the device, then it was worked very well. One of my students borrowed it from me, but I think I can get it back and I can show you tomorrow and you can try for yourself. The see-through on these is very nice, and they're relatively inexpensive compared to what they used to be. But tomorrow in the morning I'll give a bit longer lecture about kind of the future of wearable technology, and we can see where you're going. So does anybody have any other questions? Or no? Okay. Well, I guess what we'll do is you guys can keep on working, and then I'll come back and I don't think you had anything else to present, did you, Gun? You're basically done for the day, aren't you, Gun?
Yeah, I'm done.
So I'll come back around, I think around 4:30 or so, and then maybe we can. It would be great, I think, if each of the groups could just say for a few minutes where they're at and how they're going. Tomorrow, what I'm hoping is that we can have a kind of a show and tell at the end, so everybody can see how far you've got. Unfortunately, I have to leave tomorrow night. I'm flying off to a conference in Israel, so and the flight is at 5:30. So I was thinking we could do the show and tell maybe at around 3:30 or 4. Then I can make it to the airport in time to get to Auckland and meet the other flight. But anyway, and of course, you guys tomorrow, if you want to stay later, you're more than welcome to do that as well.